man in a suit at Jake's door at 8 in the morning. Jake is still in his pajamas, still holding his coffee, still completely unprepared for what is about to happen. The man introduces himself as an attorney, hands Jake a sealed envelope, and tells him that a distant relative Jake has never met has left him an inheritance. Jake opens the envelope and reads a number that does not make sense to him at first. $500 billion. 500 billion. Jake reads it 3 times. The attorney tells him there is one condition. The entire 500 billion must be spent within 7 days. Not invested, not donated, not put in a savings account, spent on purchases, transactions, acquisitions, every dollar gone by Sunday midnight, or the entire inheritance reverts to the estate. Jake looks at the attorney, looks at his coffee, looks at the number on the paper, and asks the only logical question. How hard can it be? He has absolutely no idea. Day 1. Jake starts confidently. He buys a house. A beautiful 5-bedroom house in the best neighborhood in his city. $1.4 million. He stands in his new house feeling incredible, and then he opens a calculator. 500 billion minus 1.4 million. 499 billion, 998 million, $600,000 remaining. Jake stares at the number. He spent $1.4 million, and he has barely made a dent. He buys 20 more houses, $100 million total. He checks the remaining balance. 499 billion, $900 million remaining. Jake realizes something terrifying. He has been spending for 6 hours, and he has spent less than 0.1% of what he needs to spend. Day 2, Jake escalates. He buys every private jet currently listed for sale in the United States. 240 jets, approximately $12 billion. He buys a 150-meter super yacht for $350 million. He buys a collection of 30 classic cars for $42 million. He buys an entire island in the Caribbean for $220 million. He checks the balance. $487 billion remaining. Jake has spent $13 billion in 2 days and has $487 billion left, with 5 days remaining. He starts doing the math to spend $500 billion in 7 days. He needs to spend approximately $71 billion every single day. $71 billion every day. Jake sits on his new super yacht, surrounded by things he never imagined owning, and for the first time in his life, understands in his body, not just in his head, what $500 billion actually means. Day 3. Jake calls a real estate firm. He buys every available commercial property listed in New York City, approximately $38 billion. He buys the naming rights to 3 NFL stadiums for $6 billion. He purchases a chain of 500 hotels across America for $22 billion. He acquires a regional airline for $4 billion. He buys a professional basketball team for $3.8 billion. Balance remaining, $376 billion. Jake is exhausted. He has been making purchases for 3 days straight. He has spent more money than most countries generate in a year, and he still has $376 billion left. Day 4, Jake begins to understand something that is changing how he sees the world. The reason $500 billion is almost impossible to spend is the same reason most ordinary Americans will never accumulate it. Because at a certain scale, money stops being money and starts being power. The ability to own things, control things, employ people, shape cities, influence industries. And Jake realizes that the $500 billion he is desperately trying to spend in a week represents the actual accumulated wealth of a real human being on this planet. A person who woke up this morning, had coffee, and owns $500 billion, while Jake was struggling to pay rent 2 weeks ago. Day 5. Jake tries a different approach. He calls every luxury goods company he can find. He orders 10,000 custom-made suits, 5,000 luxury watches. He buys the entire stock of every high-end jewelry store in Miami. He purchases every available painting currently listed at major auction houses, approximately $8 billion in art. He tries to buy a country, actually contacts the government of a small island nation about a purchase. The attorney calls to remind him that sovereign nations cannot be purchased. Jake checks the balance. $289 billion remaining. 2 days left. Day 6. Jake makes his largest single purchase. He acquires a pharmaceutical company for $42 billion, a technology company for $61 billion, a media company for $38 billion. He does not want to own these companies. He does not know how to run them. He is buying them purely to spend money. And the irony is not lost on him. that the act of desperately trying to spend money has accidentally turned him into one of the most powerful business owners in America. Balance remaining, $148 billion. 18 hours left, day 7, Jake calls the attorney in a panic. $148 billion, 18 hours. The attorney reminds him of the rules. No investments, no donations, no putting it in savings. Actual purchases and transactions only. Jake spends the final 18 hours buying every available piece of real estate listed across 12 American cities. He purchases 3 more sports franchises. He acquires a shipping company, a railroad, and a renewable energy company. He buys every piece of commercial aircraft currently available for purchase anywhere in the world, with 4 minutes to midnight on Sunday. Jake checks the balance, $2.3 billion remaining. The attorney calls. Jake did not spend it all. The remaining $2.3 billion reverts to the estate, and Jake is left with everything he purchased in 7 days, which happens to be one of the largest privately held asset portfolios in American history. And here's what Jake learned from 7 days of trying to spend $500 billion. That wealth at that scale is not money anymore. It is infrastructure. It is ownership of the systems that ordinary people use every single day. The planes they fly, the hotels they sleep in, the stadiums they watch games in, the companies that make the medicine they take, and the person who wakes up with $500 billion does not feel rich in the way Jake imagined when he first opened that envelope. They feel responsible and permanent and separated from ordinary life in a way that no amount of super yachts or private jets or custom suits can bridge. Here's the bottom line. $500 billion cannot be spent in 7 days. And that fact alone tells you everything you need to know about the scale of wealth that exists at the very top of the American economy. And the distance between that world and the one where Jake was 2 weeks ago trying to make rent is not a distance measured in dollars. It is a distance measured in systems, in ownership, in the invisible architecture of a financial world that most people never even see. You have been decoded. If this video made $500 billion feel real for the first time, subscribe to Money Decoder 3004. Every single week, we decode the financial forces that shape every American's life. Simply, honestly, and clearly, drop a comment below. What would be the first thing you bought if you had $500 billion and 7 days? Tell me below. I read every single comment, and I will see you in the next decode.